If you carefully look at almost all the more or less significant and truly notable achievements of the Soviet Union and Russia, it turns out that almost all of them were actually stolen from the decaying and declining West, from delicious ice cream to the powerful atomic bomb.
Today, few people remember this, but Soviet ice cream, the taste of which is familiar to all of us from childhood, appeared thanks to the People's Commissar of Food, Anastas Mikoyan. In the late 1930s, he went to America on business and, among other useful things, brought back the technology for making several types of ice cream.
Those with fragile patriotic feelings would be better off wrapping themselves in a Pravda newspaper and stepping away from the screen. This is going to hurt, because each of them knows Soviet cinema is the best in the world, kind and moral, while Western, especially American, cinema is soulless and dumb, just like everything capitalist.
American movies have become such garbage that all you can do is throw up your hands. What is this really? I have absolutely no desire to watch it.
But the interesting thing is, the most iconic Soviet films were actually shamelessly ripped off from the other side of the Berlin Wall, which is quite surprising. Kicking off our ranking is Gaidai's Kidnapping, Caucasian Style. The film is a complete copy of the 1930 American movie The Rogue Song. If you don't know the plot of Kidnapping, Caucasian Style, don't worry. You can listen to the plot of The Rogue Song. The story takes place in the Caucasus in 1910, where a Russian bandit named Yegor falls in love with Princess Vera and decides to kidnap her. His accomplices are his partners, Alibek and Murzabek. The trio bears a suspicious resemblance to Nikolin, Vitsyn, and Morgunov. The prototype of Shurik also gets drunk and ends up in ridiculous situations. In addition, Gaidai borrowed various sound effects, as well as techniques like fast motion and reverse filming, which were innovations for Soviet cinema. The ending of the comedy is eerily similar. So, Russia first stole the Caucasus, and then the Caucasian captive. The most misanthropic ideology has been absorbed into Russism. Gaidai didn't stop there, and in 1968 he produced yet another plagiarism, The Diamond Arm. Yes, Soviet fetishists. You heard that right? The Danish film Strike First, Freddy, was released 3 years before The Diamond Arm. It's a story about an ordinary man who disembarked from a ship and was captured by spies who mistook him for someone else. In reality, the main character is just a seller of entertainment toys.
Semyon Semyonovich, please come on now.
Entire plot lines and scenes in the films are identical. A ship, gangsters, a simpleton, a singer, a gangster named Kolikwile in Gaidai's film. It's purely by chance Lily can't even phrases like, "The boss will be unhappy" or borrowed.
But it's a loss. It's a loss.
There are also funny toys like a jack-in-the-box and a whole final fight at a car wash. This is where the plagiarism should have been obvious right away. What other automated, accessible car washes were there in the Soviet Union? That's science fiction. The Soviet car wash is a rag and a bucket. At best, your neighbor's mustache in the garage.
Thank you.
By the way, the famous music from The Diamond Arm also sounds suspiciously similar to the theme from hit First Freddy. If you take a closer look at the everyday life and lifestyle shown in the film The Diamond Arm, it becomes clear that they're not depicting the Soviet Union. Expensive hotels and restaurants, fashionable clothes, and travel. Nikolin's character visited Turkey, Istanbul, a NATO country that hosted American nuclear missiles during his cruise. The Cuban Missile Crisis had happened just 7 years before the film was released. A Soviet citizen couldn't just travel freely to a NATO country, not even to occupied Poland or Bulgaria. There was an internal visa regime in the USSR. In other words, you needed a visa not to enter, but to leave. And here, an ordinary worker in 1968 goes on a cruise to France and Turkey. The Diamond Arm is a more fantastical film than Alien or The Lord of the Rings. An interesting fact is that the scenes of Istanbul were filmed in Azerbaijan because the fictional Soviet character could travel, but the real film crew could not. The meeting place cannot be changed is a very well-known and direct copy of the Hungarian film, which is specifically titled The Investigation is Assigned to Me. What's the matter with your face, Sharapov?
Then why are you grinning like an idiot? You're such a fool!
In both films, the main characters are criminal investigators, and the action takes place in the post-war period. Both the Soviet and Hungarian films feature a criminal who pretends to be a law enforcement officer. Once again, Soviet filmmakers don't hesitate to steal entire scenes, chases, shootouts, interrogations of conmen. Why reinvent the wheel if the Hungarians have already invented it? By the way, this logic doesn't work for the Russians when it comes to radio. For some reason, they had Popov invent the radio all over again after Marconi.
Hello, Anyuta. You can't even imagine!
We've already gotten ourselves dirty enough with Soviet plagiarism, so it's the perfect time to go to the banya. The legendary Irony of Fate, or Enjoy Your Bath, is actually a cosplay of the 1960 Hollywood film The Apartment. In fact, it's a clone. In the film The Apartment, the events unfold during the New Year's holidays.
Coincidence? I don't think so.
One day, on Christmas Eve, the humble American worker Bud comes home and finds a girl, Fran, unconscious on his bed in his apartment. The entire plot of the film continues to revolve around the apartment. Bud falls in love with Fran, but Fran has a boyfriend, Jeff.
How very stupid can you be?
How come Ryazanov hasn't made another remake yet? The Ryazanov Jellied Fish Massacre. The film A Man from the Boulevard des Capucines, released in 1987, is essentially a cinematic adaptation of Lemonade Joe from 1964. Here, they didn't even bother to create an original plot and just completely copied the entire storyline. The only significant difference is that in the Soviet version, the cowboys eventually stopped drinking whiskey and instead switched to wholesome milk, while in the original, they transitioned to refreshing lemonade. Soviet directors work by the principle of change the drink, and it's a different movie.
We've reached the limit, beyond which lies an abyss.
Unbelievable Adventures of Italians in Russia is an exact copy of the Hollywood film. It's a mad, 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 mad world. The only difference is that in the Soviet comedy, the treasure is hidden under a lion, while in the original it's under a giant letter W.
The Mafia is truly immortal.
They couldn't even make their own classics independently in the Soviet Union. The film Heart of a Dog by Bortko, who is known for his anti-Ukrainian views, was shamelessly copied from the Italian-German adaptation of the same novel. Bortko stole by the kilo entire mise-en-scènes and copied the visual style of the whole film. Bortko's black and white sepia strongly resembles the color palette of its Western predecessor. Bortko revealed his true nature during Putin's aggression. A typical Russian cultural chauvinist. A bargain basement Mikhalkov.
We need to continue the special military operation. The war must go on, just as planned, until victory.
The Soviet system was entirely built for theft. They stole on both a state and everyday level. Copying a fighter jet and unscrewing a light bulb in the stairwell both are products of the same system. And it's no surprise, considering that this system was built by a bank robber.
Exactly.
You might ask, how was it possible that plots were stolen with impunity, and neither the original authors nor the audience were outraged? It's very simple. The USSR was a closed, isolated country. Soviet viewers simply couldn't see the originals and only received the information that was handed down to them from the Kremlin. Most of the cultural heritage of the 20th century was completely inaccessible across 1/6 of the world's landmass. The USSR is the country that invented media piracy and elevated it to an absolute.
I really can't see anything at all. Don't leave me.
But Soviet directors and composers, unlike the working masses, freely traveled abroad on tours, where they watched films, listened to music, and quietly jotted everything down in their notebooks. One thing I don't understand is how, after the release of the Terminator in 1984, the USSR managed to create the robot Werther in 1985. As they say, every country gets the Terminator it deserved. Although the robot Werther is also a plagiarism, he was stolen from two Italian films, War of the Robots and Beast in Space. And the second one is actually quite risque in content. So, in fact, it's a cybernetic porn actor helping Kolya fight pirates. Putin's Russia is gradually sinking back into the Soviet ways, even more backward than the original. That's why the tradition of stealing movies has survived there and is thriving quite well. The most notorious Putin-era footstool Mr. Chip knows himself, Nikita Mikhalkovin, the best traditions of communism, simply went and remade the iconic 1957 American film 12 Angry Men. Mikhalkov's film 12 is pure parasitism, plain and simple. Only instead of an African American, in the Russian knockoff they're judging a Caucasian. And that's a very symbolic parallel, because everyone knows how Russians refer to people from the Caucasus and treat them accordingly, just like African Americans were treated in the US in the mid-20th century. The only difference is that in Russia this is happening right now. This once again proves that Russian society is completely sick with fascism and Nazism.
There's no Russian face here. Everyone here is of the same nationality. I'm not going anywhere near that water. They might even catch gonorrhea from those people.
It must be admitted that Russians suffer not only from Nazism, but also medical conditions. How else can you explain the fact that they remade Commando with Porochenkov?
What kind of a low-life scum are you exactly?
A talentless, meaningless parody of a movie. Just like Porochenkov himself, a talentless, meaningless parody of a human being. Porochenkov should remember that he will never win an Oscar. But as for paying for his crimes, that's inevitable. In every category, war criminal, dumb facial expression, the dictator's rough tongue, and best supporting actress.
Absolutely magical.
Sometimes it truly seems like if Russians were to stop their habitual stealing, they would effectively cease being Russian. No wonder then that the most revered culture within the Russian world is in fact prison culture.
You are most heartily welcome to our humble abode.
And as a significant bonusa truly finishing, shot straight to the very heart of a Vatnik. The powerful melody of the USSR anthem and the Russian national anthem was actually stolen from the great Ukrainian composer Mykola Lysenko from his profound piece Epic Moment. Now, you must live with that reality. Vatniks, your very own anthem was actually written by a Ukrainian composer. And not just any Ukrainian, but a patriot of Ukraine and co-author of the Ukrainian language dictionary. How it happened that Ukrainians existed before Lenin remains a mystery.
I would like to remind you that this video is created for entertainment purposes and contains elements of satire and irony. All facts and events are presented in a hyperbolized or exaggerated form to convey a comedic or dramatic effect. Our goal is not to mislead, but to highlight humor. Please take it with a smile.